Today I thought we'd start talking a little bit about the history of Gadsby Wicks and how we came into being.
I mean, the whole point you need a specialist is because it's complex and you need a lot of background knowledge. But we're lawyers, we're not doctors.
There's no substitute really for experience, is there?
They don't know what they don't know. They don't know what they're missing or overlooking. And that's why specialisation is really, really important.
And I think that what conditional fee agreements did was to really ensure that there was access to justice for everybody. Hello, and welcome to the third series of our podcast, Medical Negligence Matters. In the first two series, we talked quite a lot about medical negligence generally and various aspects of that type of litigation. And today I thought we'd do something a little bit different and talk a little bit about Gadsby Wicks as a firm, why we came into being and why we do what we do. And joining me today is my friend and colleague, Tami Frankel. Hello, Tami.
Hi.
Today I thought we'd start talking a little bit about the history of Gadsby Wicks and how we came into being and why we became what we are. And I think certainly when I qualified as a solicitor in 1989, medical negligence litigation was really in its infancy. There weren't very many lawyers who were practising in that field. And those of us who were, to be honest, probably were feeling our way a little bit. And it became apparent to me quite quickly that medical negligence litigation was a bit different from many of the other types of sort of civil litigation. And the resources that one needed to do it well were quite unique. And I think that was, a knowledge and an understanding of the medicine and the practice of medicine and the environment in which the accidents that we were seeing were happening. And certainly, I think because of the demands of the litigation, I think doing that sort of work within a general practice became increasingly difficult because it had so little in common with the other types of work that the solicitors were doing. And so we had an idea that maybe it would be easier to do it within a specialist niche practice.
And I think you did that quite early, didn't you? Because I was the same in a general practice doing general work, then maybe specialising in personal injury, but clinical negligence would just be lumped in with that.
I think that's right. And I think that many people would have thought that the idea of sort of putting all your eggs in one basket and just looking at one area of law was quite risky,
yeah.
And pretty unusual. And so I guess we were taking a bit of a chance with that. But having, looked at it carefully and looked at some of the figures and I mean, I thought that it would work. And so when Gadsby Wicks started, actually, there was just Roger Wicks and myself, the two founding partners. And I think we had a couple of support staff in a very small office. And we went from there. And I think we grew very quickly. Actually, looking back, I suppose we've been going now for more than 30 years, and I think time flies.
You were definite pioneers at the time when you started out. I mean, it was a really different way to do general work, to specialise so clearly and so definitely in something. It was a real chance, but I think it did really work. And you got Gadsby Wicks got a reputation, I think, quite quickly, because I had heard of Gadsby Wicks before I came to work for you, a long time. As soon as I moved to Chelmsford, I was doing general litigation, personal injury litigation, and I'd heard of you already when I moved to Chelmsford. I mean, when I joined, one of my clearest memories is how you and Roger had this really clear vision of where the firm was and where it was going. Everything from how the office was laid out, the fact of having nurses to screen the new inquiries, the weekly meetings we had then, which are now daily, in order for the lawyers to assess those potential new clients. I remember everything being so clear, the procedure being set out, your vision so clear.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the the great benefit that Roger and I had from starting from scratch is that we had a completely clean sheet, and we were able to set the firm up in exactly the way that we wanted to. And I think we both felt we had a very clear idea of how we thought the work should be done, and the best environment in which to do the work to secure the best outcome for the clients. And I think that's ultimately what it was all about, because I think all good lawyers are really interested in doing the best possible job for the client.
Absolutely.
And you need the right environment, and you need the right resources to be able to do that. And I think the first 10 years of the firm, we were very much trying to build that environment to enable people to do the work. And we started off obviously very small, I think 2 partners and a few support staff. But I think over the first 10 years before you joined us, I think we were gradually getting established. And as you say, getting those processes in place.
And it really worked. And I remember being really happy to join the library, everything we had access to, the way everything was set up, the support staff, the secretarial staff. It made doing the work so much more of a pleasure.
I think that's interesting. I think we always felt that because the work was difficult and challenging, it's nice to be able to do it in a team where you feel supported by being surrounded by other people who are also specialists and who understand what you're doing and what you need to achieve.
And also who are interested, because however you manage to decide who to employ, everybody there was always really dedicated and interested in whatever you wanted to discuss with them. And I still find that whatever I want to discuss with anyone, they want to discuss it too. It just really makes working there a pleasure. It really does.
Yeah. And we've grown a bit, of course, since 2001 when you joined us. And we're now, I think, 8 lawyers and another 7 support staff. But I think that the underlying principle of the firm is the same. And we always felt that we never wanted to get so big that you lose the ability to control the quality of what's being done. No. But also remove that sort of feeling of the small team which supports each other and shares knowledge and expertise.
Well, it works when people go on holiday and things like that, and we have had some illness in the office or anything like that. No client is ever let down because more than one of your colleagues knows about your files anyway, because you've been discussing them as things go along. So it's of benefit to everyone. It's a really good way of working.
Yes, and I think one of the elements of what we felt very firmly as our ethos was that a client has an individual lawyer assigned to their case and deals with that case throughout, albeit with assistance from others. Yeah. And increasingly these days with the administrative burden of some of the work, we have paralegals and support staff who can assist. But fundamentally there's one lawyer assigned to the case and they remain responsible for it throughout the duration, and that's the point of contact for the client. So they have the comfort of knowing there's that person who's always sort of familiar with the case. And who is
a specialist. They can be sure that the person who's dealing with their case does know what they're doing, understands everything, and knows who they are and what's happening with their case.
Yeah. And how do you feel about the importance of specialism?
It's really important for clinical negligence. I know some people don't understand it, but of course the big difference is the medicine, and it's that thing, you don't know what you don't know. So people take on cases, clinical negligence cases, best intentions. They don't know what they don't know. They don't know what they're missing or overlooking, and that's why specialisation is really, really important. It's what we do. It's almost second nature now. And coupled with that is the fact of all the support we have from our colleagues. I may know something isn't right, or I need something else, or I'm not sure which of these 2 experts would be best. I go next door to the office next door and ask whoever's in that day to help me, and I'm able to discuss it with them.
Yes, I think one of the unique things about clinical negligence is that very often it's difficult to tell at the outset what a case is really about, isn't it? Because many clients who come to us have very limited knowledge about what's really happened to them and why it's happened. And sometimes people come to us thinking that one thing has gone wrong in actual fact, it's something different. And so I think a huge element of what we do is actually sort of forensically examining the evidence that's there, what's in the medical records and what the patient knows and understands about their condition, and trying to construct, I suppose, a case theory to understand exactly what happened and why. And I think that's the unique skill for clinical negligence litigators over and above, sort of general.
Not just taking the client's own case theory, what they think has gone wrong, what they're angry about. I think you have to explore that. You have to explore that for them, for their peace of mind. But you also have to look at it in the round and look at whether anything has gone wrong. People only come to us if something has gone wrong. So the big question really from the beginning for us is, what happened? How did this person end up in this position? Even though the client has come to you thinking that it's because of a particular type of error or omission or something.
Yes, and I think it's that skill in being able to build a case is supported by the fact that there are others around the office
Definitely.
with similar expertise and with the investment in things like training.
The training is important.
Library. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that we all have the resources that we need in order to be able to do that.
Have our individual training. We make our own training, don't we? We do have online training and in-person training. We attend courses, but we also invite people in to come and talk to us, don't we? At least 4 times a year. We have medical experts, we have barristers, we have other people coming in, accountants, aligned people, so that we understand more about what we're doing all of the time. It's really important. And it builds our relationships with those people who are there to help us and work with us as well.
From a public's point of view, I mean, how do you think you can identify a true specialist in medical negligence and sort of distinguish them from another very good lawyer who does some other kind of litigation?
I think the only real way for someone who is doing this for the first time in their life, seeking a solicitor for a clinical negligence case for the first time in their life, is really to look at accreditation, because accreditation is not easy to get. So is your lawyer accredited by the Law Society or by AVMA or by APIL? And if they're not, it doesn't mean that they're not a good lawyer, but you can't be sure that they are.
So, I mean, I think a true specialist, in order to get accreditation, has to be able to demonstrate that they have got enough experience so that they've dealt with a certain number of cases, that they've dealt with certain types of cases, and they've dealt with certain problems that come up on cases. And I think there's no substitute really for experience, is there?
That's the point of accreditation. It shows that you've done it. And not just the common things, but the less common bits of the litigation, which of course is where the non-specialist is likely to be tripped up. Because again, as I say, it's you don't know what you don't know kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, things like being able to find the right experts to assist in cases, isn't it? And also being able to really properly scrutinise the advice that you're getting from the experts.
Oh, reading the expert's report, yes, and making sure they've covered everything you want them to, seeing where the gaps may be or where the contradictions may even be within the same report, which happens a lot.
Yeah, and I think also understanding and making sure that the experts understand the legal framework that they're working within, so that they're applying the right tests when giving advice about the clinical care. And that can be very difficult because, of course, most of the experts are people who are in full-time clinical practice, and virtually all of them are in full-time clinical practice. And that's very different. So their day job is very different from their sort of medico-legal job.
Writing job, yeah.
So looking back over the sort of 32 years that Gadsby Wicks has been in existence, I mean, I think that the legal landscape has changed enormously, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, in so many respects. I think procedurally, when I first qualified, the rules of civil claims in this country were very different from what they are now.
Well, it feels as though there were no rules, as though gradually over the last 30 years or so, rules have evolved. I think it's good. We know where we stand now. But yeah, it felt like, what did they used to call it? Trial by ambush. Nobody knew anything about your case.
That's right. There's the legal Wild West. I mean, you turn up at trial not knowing what the other side was going to say. And exciting though that may have been, it was, I think, nerve-wracking for everybody. But I think these days, of course, litigation is much more cards on the table, isn't it? And we have much more I guess, oversight by the courts in the management of cases, which has some positives. And I think it's a landscape that's much more sort of certain. I think that some things have become much more difficult, haven't they? I think funding, for example, funding litigation is...
And that's been really unfair on clients. I mean, the end result has been conditional fee agreements, which means actually that the claimant lawyers take all of the risks, really, but at least it's allowed people to continue to have access to justice.
I think that's right. I mean, I think a lot of people regret the demise of legal aid, which used to be the main funding system for clinical negligence. And personally, I'm not so sure that the loss of legal aid was an altogether bad thing, because, of course, legal aid was never available to everybody.
No.
It was always something that was means tested, and there was always a large section of society that wouldn't qualify for legal aid and yet weren't in any way in a position to fund litigation. And I think that what conditional fee agreements did was to really ensure that there was access to justice for everybody, providing you could find a solicitor who had the expertise to
take on the case,
assess that risk and take on the case for you. So I think on the whole, that's been a sort of a positive thing. I think one thing that I regret slightly is the focus constantly on costs. I think that has, and certainly in recent years, has become much more prominent. Not looking so much about the outcomes of cases, but on the
requirements of investigating a case. I mean, the whole point you need a specialist is because it's complex and you need a lot of background knowledge. But we're lawyers, we're not doctors, and so we need help. And sometimes you need a number of medical experts to advise you, simply because the injury and the type of care spans a number of different types of medical care. And if you're not going to be allowed to pay for that, it means that your client is going to have to go without all of the investigatory and all of the expert evidence they require.
Yeah, I mean, it's undoubtedly true that litigation is expensive. It always was. And some people will say, well, so it should be, because it puts off people who have unmeritorious claims from pursuing them. But I think that one of the things that I think is concerning is there is a lack of recognition, I think, in some quarters of the fact that if you are going to insist that people jump through certain hoops in order to prove cases and the standards and the burdens of proof are what they are, there is a certain cost in meeting those standards. And that I think lawyers have had to become much more smart about how cases are investigated and how the money is spent, and that's a good thing, I think.
It is a good thing, but it can be limiting, and it's not always to the benefit of the client. But again, it's where specialisation helps, because if you know of particular experts, not just the area of expertise, but an individual expert, if you've built up relationships over years, you can ask them questions, you can have informal advice from them, which can just steer you in the right direction. You know you can't get this much evidence, so what do? They can just help you a little bit, and that's all to the benefit of your clients.
Yeah. So I think although there are so many aspects of the sort of civil litigation landscape that have changed, I mean, I think the underlying principles of the firm, I think, have remained the same. And I think it's always been the case that what we are really aiming for is to do the best possible job for our clients and to achieve an outcome that enables them, not to undo that. When we can't rewrite history, we can't undo that. But what we can do, hopefully, is put people in a position where they can move on with their lives with some financial security. That is our main focus. I mean, everything we do is aligned to trying to get that outcome.
If we can't get that outcome, at least they can be confident, because of the advice we've been able to secure for them, that whatever happened to them, awful as it was, couldn't have been avoided. And they've got an unbiased opinion that tells them that. So they at least have that level of comfort and understanding to maybe lead to closure for them.
Thanks, Tami.